the golden hills of California, land of the golden grass. Here in these hills, almost 200 years ago, a dream was dreamed for the first time. An incredible dream, an impossible dream, but a dream that's now coming true 2 centuries later in a way far beyond even the wildest expectations of those early Californians. This is the story of that dream and of the generations it took to make it come true. The dream was first glimpsed by the early California missionaries when they arrived in this land of the golden grass. A Spanish padre probably pulled a handful of this grass and despaired. The poet, the painter may see beauty in the golden grass, but to the old Spanish padre it was golden because it was dry, it was parched, it was dead. And so the old padre began to dream. He noticed that far up in the hills there was always water, in certain spots where the streams flowed cool and clear. And so here at Mission Santa Barbara was built the first irrigation system in California to channel those mountain waters down onto the fields and gardens of the mission. Down through the centuries, other Californians would dream still bigger dreams of bringing more water to the parched lands. And one by one, the fields would begin turning green and the deserts would begin blooming, until one day California would find itself supplying half the fruits and vegetables on the tables of America, and 95% of those California crops would be coming from irrigated lands. Meantime, up and down the Golden State, other farms and villages and cities were dreaming the Padre's dream. The city of Los Angeles reached out a concrete drinking straw 340 miles across mountains and deserts to tap the waters of the mighty Colorado River on the Arizona border. So did California's once arid Imperial Valley. And the city of San Francisco built an aqueduct through 2 mountain ranges and across the vast Central Valley to drink from the abundant waters of Yosemite National Park. Then the sprawling Central Valley project was conceived by California and built by the federal government back in the 1930s when much of the West was choking in the Dust Bowl. It funneled the abundant waters of the snow-capped Sierra down onto the rich farmlands of the Central Valley. But still the dreamers dreamed, bigger and bigger dreams. They saw the bitter irony that 3/4 of the state's water supply gushes from the streams of moist northern California, while 3/4 of the need for that water lies in the dry regions of central and southern California. Why then, they dreamed, couldn't California build a gigantic water system? A water system so immense, so far beyond the wildest dreams of mankind, that it could be used to channel the excess waters of northern California 600 miles southward. Well, to some it was indeed the impossible dream. The system would not only have to be half as long as the Mississippi River, but it would have to be as wide and as deep as a river itself. The dreamers knew that if it could be built, it would require a state contract bigger even than any federal contract in history, except for defense contracts. But they dared to dream. And now, just across those hills from where the Spanish padre first dreamed a small dream, the big dream is now taking shape. And so vast is it that someone has predicted that when the first men reach the moon and look back down through the swirling mists of Earth, they'll be able to see only 2 man-made structures. One will be the Great Wall of China, and the other will be one of the man-made wonders of the modern world, the mammoth California Aqueduct, a major component of the impossible dream. This is the visitor's overlook at Oroville Dam, keystone of the massive new California water project. Down there below us right now is the highest dam in the United States. 60 feet higher than Hoover Dam, higher than Shasta Dam, higher than Grand Coulee Dam. Higher, in fact, than any earth-filled dam in the entire Western world. Now, the reason we're telling you all this before we show it to you for the first time is that you may feel you should be impressed when you see it. But as a matter of fact, you may not be exactly bowled over with astonishment. Now, this may be the first time anybody ever made that admission publicly, but we just wanted to warn you in advance so you wouldn't feel guilty if your mouth doesn't drop open with astonishment. After all, when you're a tourist and you've driven this far to see one of the man-made wonders of the world, admitting that you're not impressed is well, it's a little bit like admitting that you're bored by baseball. So most tourists at least give it the old college try and say it's just what they always wanted. So now that you're warned, why don't you have a look for yourself? Well, there it is, the highest dam in America. As one worker said, you'd be surprised how many visitors look straight down at it and then say, but where's the dam? Well, if it doesn't exactly look like the highest, maybe it's because being an earth-filled dam instead of one of those skinny concrete structures, it's almost 5 times thicker at the base than it is tall. Sort of chubby, you might say. And after all, who notices how tall a fat lady is? Actually, of course, it really is an incredible engineering accomplishment. But maybe looking at it as a little like looking out into the infinity of space. You're not exactly impressed with infinity until you stop to think about it. And then you're kind of staggered. So let's think a little bit about Oroville Dam. For example, how would you guess the total mass of this dam compares with the Great Pyramids of Egypt? What would you guess? Think it's as big? Well, hold on to your hat. This dam contains 10 times the combined mass of all 6 of the largest pyramids. 10 times. It's the greatest earth-moving achievement known to the heavy construction industry. And as we've said, it's the largest non-defense contract ever awarded in the United States. It's as high as a 62-story skyscraper, taller than any skyscraper west of the Mississippi. It's more than a mile wide at the top, 2/3 of a mile thick at the base. And it may look like a short hike up the side, but it's almost half a mile. And when the gates are finally closed, sometime very soon now, it'll form a lake with 167 miles of shoreline, enough water to supply the household needs of every Californian for a full year. Truly a creation that dwarfs the splendors of the ancient fables. Perhaps this, too, deserves to be told in the style of a fable. And so, when the last rays of sunset have faded from the Sierra, there are those in the Motherlode who tell of strange doings deep within an ancient mountain, where there dwells a race of men who hammer out thunderbolts beside an underground stream. They say they dwell at the end of a long tunnel, which stretches almost a quarter mile into the core of the mountain, leading to a huge cavern as high as a 10-story building carved from solid rock. And they say that it's here that the Thunderbolts are made. And the strangest thing of all is that the story is true, if you allow a bit for poetic license, or at least it will be true very soon now. We really are in the middle of a mountain, the mountain adjacent to Oroville Dam. Those are transformers you hear buzzing away in the background. And very soon now, there'll be a lake up there above us, Oroville Lake. Oh, the underground stream. Well, that would be the penstocks that will soon be carrying the water from Oroville Dam under hundreds of pounds of pressure per square inch. And that water really will be used to make Thunderbolts, 230,000 volts worth. When the water of Oroville Dam spins these giant rotors in the generators now being installed here in the Hall of the Mountain King. This will be the largest underground powerhouse in the world. And why was it built underground? Well, as one engineer said, why not? That's where the water pressure is, and it's cheaper that way. As a matter of fact, at some spots you can still see the exposed rock where they carved out the room. Of the 6 turbines now being installed in these gaping 5-story deep holes, 3 of them will actually be reversible turbines. That is, when the demand for power is greatest and it can be sold for the highest profit, they'll be used to draw on the lake water to generate electricity. But when the demand for power is low and the rates are cheap, those turbines will be used to actually pump some of that same water back up into the lake to be used again and again. Sort of a perpetual motion machine, but not quite. Actually, Oroville Dam is introducing that pump-back technique to California for the first time. But one of the biggest stories about this dam is the story of the way it was built. Because, like the mythological Age of the Mountain King, this too was an era when giants shook the earth. Giants like this one. The 155 million tons of earth it took to build the dam were a gift from California's gold miners of years ago. 11 miles from the dam lies a vast field of tailings, a man-made mountain of earth, left over from the days when it was dredged up from the earth during the era of dredger mining, before that sort of desecration was strictly regulated. A specially designed digging machine scooped up those tailings fast enough to fill a railroad car every minute. Then another special device needed only 14 minutes to load a 40-car train, 10 cars at a time, to be pulled by 2 specially designed locomotives 11 miles along the dam's own railroad line to the construction site. There, a unique dumping machine emptied 2 cars at a time without even bothering to uncouple them from the rest of the train, thanks to a unique swivel coupling. Next, one of the biggest conveyor belts in the world lifted that material across the Feather River and up the side of the dam to the top, where still more loading machines spilled the soil into the spreaders 2 at a time, which then dropped the fill material neatly into place on top of the dam. It went on 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. And when the sun sank behind the mountains and darkness came again to the Sierra, the huge light towers cast an eerie glow across the strange forest scene, and a new breed of giants labored on into the wee hours of the morning, far above the hall of the Mountain King, where someday, very soon, lightning bolts will be hammered out in a room beneath the earth. And there's another aspect of the Great California Water Project that sounds like something out of a storybook. There once was a time in an ancient age of fables when men dreamed of being able to accomplish the impossible, like making waterfalls go up instead of down, or making rivers run upstream. But of course, it's only a fable that could never come true. Or could it? Well, as a matter of fact, it not only could come true, but very soon now it will be coming true here in California, thanks to those modern wizards, the men with the slide rules. This trick photography, in a figurative sense, illustrates the modern miracle that the designers of the Mammoth California Aqueduct are about to accomplish. They're building a 400-mile-long artificial river that will literally flow upstream much of the way, carrying as much water as the summertime flow of the Sacramento River, all the way from the northern Sierra to the thirsty regions of central and southern California. At some points, this man-made river will be wide enough to accommodate an ocean-going freighter, if it were foolish enough to get sucked in through the pumps. And like that waterfall in reverse, the entire river will be hurled upward 2,000 feet to cross the towering Tehachapi Mountains that separate northern from southern California, an engineering feat unmatched anywhere in the world. And this whole statewide flow of water will be automatically controlled by electronic computers. It all starts at Oroville Dam, from where the water will be fed back into the Feather River, thence into the Sacramento River, both of which will be serving as Mother Nature's own aqueducts for the 100-mile trip downstream to the Sacramento and San Joaquin deltas. Eventually, a special peripheral canal is expected to carry the Oroville water around the delta to the head of the Great Aqueduct for the main leg of the southward journey. But until that peripheral canal is finally built, the delta itself will be serving as the missing link in the aqueduct. In the delta, just north of Rio Vista, the North Bay Aqueduct will siphon off part of the Oroville water for a 28-mile side trip to Solano and Napa counties. It's been suggested that construction of both the North Bay Aqueduct and the Peripheral Canal might be postponed for a while because of a fund shortage. Meantime, most of the Oroville water will be sucked out of the delta near Tracy and spewed into the Great Aqueduct at the phenomenal rate of almost 300 million gallons an hour. This is the start of the uphill climb. To accomplish it, these pumps lift the water a couple of hundred feet above the valley floor, up into the foothills along the west side of the valley, to give it enough height to flow southward by gravity. Before it finally reaches the Tehachapi, it'll be lifted several more times by still more pumps. Near the Delta pumping plant, the South Bay Aqueduct branches off to supply water to part of the area south of San Francisco. That part of the California Water Project is already in operation. But the main body of the water will flow on southward, pausing along the way near Los Banos to single-handedly fill the new San Luis Reservoir, where the state and federal governments have just finished building the largest dam in the world without its own natural source of water. From there, the Great Aqueduct drifts on southward, watering the crops of the dry San Joaquin Valley as it goes. One leg branches off to the sea to supply Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, but the main leg smashes headlong into the towering barrier of the Tehachapi Mountains. And it's here that the most astounding engineering miracle of the entire California Water Project will be accomplished. A revolutionary pumping plant has been designed that will take the entire south end output of the aqueduct and hurl it upward 2,000 feet above the valley floor, lifting more water higher than ever before in history. The river will cross the mountains in huge earthquake-resistant tunnels, now being bored just beneath the upper peaks. As the water tumbles back down to sea level, it will generate as much power as Hoover Dam. From here on, it's down the home stretch. One leg of the aqueduct will carry the water on toward Los Angeles by 1971. Another branch will channel it on toward the towns in the Mojave Desert and to San Diego by 1972. And so, someday soon, California school children will be learning the name of a new river in their native state, a man-made river that flows upstream like a fanciful page from some book of ancient fables. This is the most westerly, the most arid stretch of California's San Joaquin Valley, a part of it known simply as the far west side. Out here, the Old West still lives. But take a last lingering look at this lonely, haunted landscape, because it's here. Even where there is enough water to grow crops on the far west side, that water is expensive, and the underground water table is falling dangerously low. And from the joint state and federal project at San Luis Dam, where crops already grow, the desert will be held at bay. All this with the arrival of a commodity so precious that elsewhere men have raised a temple to it.
The water temple, the frozen music of architecture, raised in a marble hymn to the coolness, the wetness, the life-giving indispensability of water. The ancients once raised temples to the things in nature around which their lives revolved: the sun, the moon, the stars, the seasons. But this temple to water was raised by a modern race of men who are more aware than most of the importance of water because they've lived for 2 centuries with a shortage of it. It was built by Californians, a people who are now completing one of the greatest water transportation feats in the history of mankind. Actually, of course, this water temple wasn't built specifically to honor the California Water Project. This is San Francisco's oldest water temple, built to mark the spot where that city's water supply bubbles up out of the ground after a 150-mile trip from Yosemite National Park. But in a sense, it serves as a reminder of the importance that water holds in and the future of all Californians. And so perhaps this is a good place to ruminate for a moment about that future. With the completion of the California Water Project, the experts believe California will be able to accommodate a doubling of its population over the next 25 years. And by further expanding that project to include additional dams along the state's north coast, they even believe California can accommodate a tripling of its population over a 50-year period. That expansion would also bring flood control to wild rivers like the Eel that have ravaged that area throughout history. But that's the last major undeveloped source of water in the entire state. And someday those streams too will probably be like the Colorado River on California's southeastern border, where not a single drop escapes unused into the sea today. So where do we go from there in 50 years? Well, there are several alternatives, including the desalting of seawater and the more extensive reclamation of wastewaters. But the experts say that such schemes will probably never be able to produce all of the additional water that California will need someday. And so the experts are turning their eyes northward to the wide rivers and gushing streams of the Pacific Northwest rainforest. Today, much of that water in the Northwest escapes unused into the sea. But before California and the other states of the arid West can share that surplus water, they'll probably have to sell the people of the Pacific Northwest on the idea, because today they're afraid that they themselves may need that surplus water someday to take care of their own population explosion. There are some who feel the California Water Project may have helped to clear the way toward such a solution by largely resolving the same sort of regional water differences that have traditionally split northern and southern California. But meantime, some of the experts are looking even beyond the Pacific Northwest to an Olympian plan that would tap the melting snows of Alaska and Canada in a massive continental water plan. But that's all a long way in the future. Meantime, the California Water Project is facing problems of its own, financial problems. It was originally financed during the Brown administration by the largest bond issue ever voted for a single project, $1.75 billion. But now the Reagan administration is saying that the waters are clouded by what it terms the gross inadequacy of that bond issue. And some say a new bond issue may now be needed to finish the project. The original water delivery dates are still expected to be met, but there's a possibility that some aspects of the water project may be delayed for a while to conserve existing funds. Meantime, the search will continue to find still more water. For, as someone has said, California's destiny is never to resolve its water problem, but always to work at it. And the dedication of California to that task is reflected in the words of Isaiah, inscribed here on the water temple. I give waters in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give my people drink. Bill Branch, Channel 13 News.